Is it okay to use human slavery as an analogy to animal industry? Yes, it is. If it makes sense, use it. Don't just throw it around willy-nilly. It has to make sense. It has to make sense for that particular conversation or that person that you're talking to. But I'm not against using human slavery. I'm not against using the word rape. I'm not against using the word Holocaust. All of these words can be used to prove your point and to help that person understand the injustice better if it makes sense for that conversation. Why do you all compare killing animals to gay rights or BLM? That's a really good question. I would understand that as a non-vegan, you may not understand why we do this, but what's happening to the animals, and it has been happening for a very long time, is an injustice. Much like what has been happening to Black people or gay people, also in other injustices that you see when it comes to human rights issues. So that's why sometimes we compare animal exploitation, especially what's happening with animal agriculture, to those movements to point out the injustice and the fact that these animals have been exploited and oppressed for the longest. Humans have always exploited and oppressed these animals, and it's been going on for the longest. And you could argue that's the biggest injustice in terms of the number of victims, so the number of individual animals that are being exploited, raped, tortured, and killed. You can't even wrap your head around that number. It is the biggest injustice in terms of the number of victims. So even though you might find it weird that animal rights activists make the comparison because you're like, we're humans, they're animals. Yes, we're just different species, but that doesn't mean that because we're humans, we have the right to oppress and exploit those animals just because they look different to us. And for many people, if they have been oppressed, for someone who's gay or for a Black person who has gone through that, or even as a woman who has been oppressed, those people a lot of times tend to be able to understand this better because they have experienced it firsthand and they have seen it happen to themselves or people around them, so they're able to make that connection easier with the animals and they get the injustice better.